Welcome to the Modest Sports Show, home of your modest sports takes. I'm Corey. Right now, man, it's 1:15 in the morning. 1:15 in the morning. It's been a long day, but this right here, this is what we passionate about. So come hella high water, we gonna get this content out and we gonna give a modest take on what we believe in, bro. So that's just that on that. Tonight, man, or I guess this morning, we talking about the SEC and the Big Ten merger. I've been doing just kind of thinking of some content, some fresh, some innovative ideas to bring to the show that coincides with us having guests on. I'm like, of course, we're going to cover the football side of things, but I feel like something that gets slept on and something that has great meaning and great control over the outcome of college football is the administrative part. And so tonight, I just want to go over some things. I want to go over this SEC and Big Ten merger, right? And so jumping straight into that, I'll just give you guys a quick synopsis of what the NCAA is going through right now. So I feel like it's well known that the NCAA is not quite the best functioning and governing body when it comes to intercollegiate athletics. And that has been expressed by many people, especially those higher ups and executives in each league. For instance, the commissioners of each league, so the SEC, like Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti in the Big Ten, presidents at various schools, like everybody kind of has a great understanding that, okay, the NCAA it was okay at one point in time, and I still feel like people thought that it was unfair then. But now as NIL becomes bigger, there were some other things cited. I feel like NIL, revenue distribution, amongst other things, right? Just as college football continues to grow and the landscape continues to change, there are prodding issues that the NCAA does not quite handle effectively. So with that being said, the commissioners and the people who reside over each conference, from the Big Ten to the SEC to the ACC to Big 12, so forth and so on, they want to establish equitable guidelines and something consistent that also has longevity in terms of revenue distribution, playoff format, and amidst other things. But we're going to get into that. I think the topic for this video and the biggest thing that you should walk away with is definitively right now, although the hope is that the NCAA college football moves to a 12-team format, that's not definitive as of right now. As of 1:19 a.m. February the 8th, that is not definitive. The 12-team playoff format is not definitive. And even to get more specific, the format within the format of the 12-team playoff is not specific. So they're trying to see right now, are we going to have six automatic berths and then 6 at large? Are we going to have 5 automatic berths, 7 at large? Nothing is in concrete yet, right? And so I got a list of things right now in terms of what we should know, given Greg Sankey has gone to Tony Petitti and pretty much requested membership in a partnership to pursue, I would say, to pursue better advising outside of the NCAA. And so some things that we should know is there were stakeholders that approached Sankey to encourage the SEC and the Big Ten to identify and simplify their goals. Greg Sankey, he met with Paul Feinbaum this past week, and he on the show, Feinbaum mentioned that Sankey and Petiti would be alliances, and so that was a scary term. Which Sankey also said that don't use the word alliance, right? Because if we say a SEC and a Big Ten merger, in the SEC, we got powerhouses. In the Big Ten, we got powerhouses. So if we're combining those two, I think that is frightening for the NCAA because they look at it like, okay, well, they might not need us as a governing body. They might start to govern themselves. And I also think, right, with a large part of revenue, with a large part of the teams in both of those conferences competing and playing in the playoffs year in and year out, from the Alabamas to the Michigans to the Ohio States to these powerhouse programs. When it comes to revenue distribution and deals and agreements with these broadcasting networks like ESPN, all this stuff is meaningful because ultimately the ones if the playoff is formatted to, like I was reading and I was doing research, well, okay, if you get this far, you get X million dollars. If you get this far, you get X million dollars. This far, X million, and so forth and so on. And so if you have a large part of those teams in the SEC, in the Big Ten, those are the only teams winning and advancing, especially given the format of the playoff. The revenue distribution is not going to necessarily be equitable to teams that are not in the SEC or the Big Ten. So that is something that is extremely pressing. I think that people are trying to figure out, especially those executives are trying to figure out how do we go about ensuring that we get away from what was created in the BCS era, right? Where it's a dominant, SEC was dominant in that era pretty much. And the whole point in going to a 14 playoff was to get away from that. But as you can see, there was still success in that 14 playoff in the SEC and in other, and I think with the Big Ten winning one this past season, I'm not quite sure on the math, but it just makes for a disaster when ultimately on the field, it's just hard for me to understand because ultimately good football wins. So no matter how you try to sculpt it, no matter how you try to modify it, at the end of the day, the best teams are always gonna rise to the top. It's gonna be the cream of the crop. And so, but just getting back on this and focus on this, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're considering a merger just in terms of advising. And I said that it was funny. I thought it was funny because personally they labeled it kind of a think tank. I said that typically, and that is exactly why Greg Sankey didn't want to use the word alliances when he was on the show with Paul Feinbaum, because, all right, if we use the word alliance, if we use the word ally, that means we're going against something, right, that we don't necessarily agree with. And in that case, this would be the NCAA. I will say that Sankey he was quoted or cited saying this effort to form an advisory group is not about the NCAA. He said we need a healthy national governing body. To the extent we can contribute to that in any way, that explains more what our focus will be. And so Sankey is wanting to ensure not, I would say Sankey is wanting to ensure the NCAA, as well as the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-2, any other conference, right? That like, hey man, don't put too much emphasis on the SEC and the Big Ten merging together to want to talk about stuff, to want to try to come up with solutions to these issues in college football, what they call a litany of issues. But at the same time, I can definitely see where if you're on the outside looking in, it's concerning because it's like, if you all are creating this acquisition, what are we to expect of this? what's the what's the point? Why can't we discuss all these issues amongst one another? Why does it have to just be the SEC and the Big Ten? And so I don't want to say like, okay, this is gonna be like breaking news or anything. I'll just say be on the lookout for a SEC and a Big Ten merger at some point in time, giving these constraints. After the 2025 season, the top 10 FBS leagues are not binded by any contracts of any sort. So, given ESPN agreements or any agreement that the CFP might have with ESPN also. And so I just feel like ultimately it's a disaster. It's a mixture of things that could contribute to us maybe seeing an exodus of teams leave the NCAA to choose, okay, if we don't like the revenue distribution with okay, I believe that it's a 460 million annually, the contract that was previously signed, and that would go into or that would continue to go into effect. Teams don't like that. They like, okay, we got to split this money up, 5-6 millions per school, and then that goes so forth and so on, depending on the amount of games that you win and the playoff in your playoff rise, I guess. So this is something that is definitely interesting. I actually learned a lot doing the research on this, and it definitely goes behind the veil of just seeing your favorite team compete or seeing your favorite team play on ESPN on a random Saturday. It's like these kind of discussions, this kind of discourse makes that stuff happen and makes that stuff go. And so this was really just a quick, this was just something quick. I just wanted to hit on this quick tonight. That's what I'm going to label this video. SEC, Big Ten merger. Be on the lookout for what that could mean for the college football landscape. Is that going to be something that is going to be exactly as it was cited? Just a think tank. We just trying to come up with some ideas to, be able to make college football a better landscape? Or does Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti say, man, we really got all the like with Washington, UCLA, USC, Oregon, those teams going to the Big Ten with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC? Do we say, okay, hey man, we really got all the teams we need to create a super conference, and we could do what we do, and then everybody else can do what they do. You know what I mean? So that's going to be something interesting to be on the lookout for. I would say another issue is the format. Something that's crazy to me is we're sitting in February of 2024, and they are still uncertain of how this year's playoffs is going to go. Kind of like I was stating earlier, is it going to be a 6 automatic playoff berth, right? With, okay, Alabama, Michigan, USC, Oregon, like are the teams at the top of college football, they automatically get in. And then the other 6 are like, okay, we'll figure out based on, point differentials and, all the other metrics, the other 6 teams, how they get in. Or are we going to go 5 automatic versus 7? So it's so many issues and there's so many things attached to the format and how that might affect not just this year, but every other year moving forward, that I'm going to try to continue to cover this. I'm going to try to continue to learn and figure this out. And I do, like I said, like I always say, I think this is a healthy discourse. I think this is definitely something that if you call yourself a real football fan, that grabs your attention, like, man, I want to learn more about this and try to gain a better understanding of it, what it all means. But drop in the comments, drop them like, hey man, Corey, you missed this, or you said, this, maybe this was off a little bit, just because I'm trying to gain a footing on what all this means. So, uh, yeah, man, share anything, share any knowledge, any information you have about the topic, about the subject, right? And let's figure this thing out together. That's what I would say. Um, I do believe one of the funny instances that is taking place right now, which it will be discussed, I believe, this week at some point in time, because they're meeting in Dallas, I think, the CFP committee and as well as some other executives. But SMU going to the ACC was something I thought was funny, given that their school president essentially said, like, okay, now that we're a part of the ACC and this revenue distribution with the residing agreement we have with ESPN, it's like, okay, now that we're joining that league, we can get a piece of the pie, right? Every other executive or commissioner is like, nah, man, like this was long standing before you, so you're gonna have to miss out on this round of getting money. And then when we start a new agreement and everything else, then you can jump in and you can be a part of that. And so it's just a lot of white collar jargon and just a lot of I think a lot of just trying to figure it out, you know, and trying to be equitable by what's given, by who gets what, by also voting rights and voting power, So it's just, man, it's a lot to cover. It really is, especially if you aren't in those rooms and you only get, the articles and the things going on. I do feel like this is something that is not necessarily talked about a lot, but we gonna like I'm gonna get better at covering this. I'm gonna continue to learn more about it, continue to give you guys great information, and just try to break it down the best that I can, because like I said, I'm still trying to get a footing on it. And so man, other than that, like I said, man, 1:30 in the morning, we just grinding, man. We look, just just keep going, no matter where you at in life, man. Keep going, don't quit, don't stop. We gonna get it. Everything gonna be all right. I love to say that everything gonna be all right, and we gonna be able to reference on videos like this and be like, yeah, man, you ain't quit. So that just is what it is. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, share it around. Like I said, tonight this was for the real football heads. If this is your speed, then that's all the more reason you should be, you know, tuned in to the Modern Sports Show. Outside of that, we're gonna continue to bring fresh, young guests on the show, because we doing this thing from the top down. We're gonna go. We obviously tonight we covered administration. Soon enough, we're gonna be covering coaches. Got some trainers that that we're gonna hit out or hit up and reach out to, and of course my players, like my guys, right? Like we're gonna get them on the show. We're gonna continue to get young dudes on the show. So be on the lookout for that. Continue to help me build this up and grow this space for college athletics. It's something that I'm passionate about. And hey man, let's just do it. Let's do it. That's it. Peace.